Hello and welcome to all of you out there. My name is Eli Martyr. Thank you so much for joining me here once again on the FreeMelon Society. So today I'm going to read for you another YouTube comment that I thought was important that I share with you guys, and then we're going to do what we can to answer the comment. So thank you very kindly for the person who left this comment. And yeah, let's take a look. So the comment reads, I'm looking into this diet and I believe it's very healthy. But the questions I have are, why is there no record of a culture or group of people living in this way? Every culture in history, as far as I can find, were hunters. Is there any real proof that eating this way leads to a longer and healthier life? The longest lived people on Earth don't do this. It seems the people who wrote the books on natural hygiene lived relatively short lives. Most of the people who promote this diet are pretty young. Oh, are pretty young? ? I don't see many older people who've been eating this way for decades out promoting it, but I just may not be looking in the right places. People like Dr. Morris and John Rose are great, but don't look any better than most of the 70-year-olds I know that drink and eat meat. For me, I eat almost all plant-based, but the fruitarian diet is very interesting, but I'm not sure yet if it's truly the best. I believe Steve Jobs was a fruitarian, no? Okay. So to tackle the first part, and hopefully I won't keep you too long here today, why do we not really see this talk of a natural human type of diet, a fruitarian type of diet, promulgated in the literature? Why do we not see it? Why do we not hear it? Isn't it that all of our ancestors were all hunters and, and gatherers, and just the common thing that we've been told? So where is the evidence? Where is the proof that we ate like this? One thing I want to press on the audience. Now, the lecture I just released prior to this dealt with the nature of viruses and bacteria. It's part 2 of the viruses and bacteria series that I uploaded. So if you've seen that, if you haven't, then you can go watch that if you want. But let's consider this. The reality of how viruses and bacteria, the reality of how disease comes about a person or an organism has absolutely nothing to do with what the entire world believes it is currently, right? So again, I want to stress this. We have these questions where, why don't I see this in the literature? Like, how could it be true if nobody in the world does it? Well, you have to ask yourself, when an authority figure or group or body or an oligarchy has control over history and over what history the public has access to, it doesn't become very difficult to convince a population, a nation, a country, a planet of a certain thing or along a certain line of thinking. Take a look at the world right now. The vast majority, I would say, I guess, of people on planet Earth right now believe, because that's what they've been taught, that there exist evil viruses and bacteria that they have to protect themselves from. Now, that has nothing to do with the reality of the situation. Absolutely nothing. Yet, everybody believes this. Why does everybody believe this? Because the truth and the actual literature that shows otherwise is choked out. The people who give that information, their books are not published, their articles are scrubbed from the medical literature. It's just, they make it as difficult as possible to get access to information. Now, if they could do that with just this very topic that I just spoke on in the last lecture, do you imagine it would be so hard to divorce an entire planet from what its natural diet would be? It's very conceivable. In fact, that's exactly what's happened. So to answer the question, why is there no record of cultures or groups of people living like this? The answer is there are. It's just that we are only given easy or immediate access to sources of information that do not either want or are ignorant of the records that we do have. And if you give me a second, I'll share some quotes and stuff with you. Then there's the next part. Every culture in history were hunters. Well, not really. Every culture in the modern historical record that we have access to may have hunted Yes, but that doesn't mean that they were hunters by physiological design. It also doesn't mean that the preponderance of their diet didn't come from other things, from foraging and gathering. Yeah, they may have hunted, but that doesn't mean that that was the diet. In fact, when we look at fossilized remains from our ancient forefathers, if we're looking at dental records or we're looking at fossilized fecal records, we see that they were actually plant eaters. We find plant tissue, plant fibers, fossilized in the teeth and in the feces. So we know that they did eat plants. Now also bear in mind that this record that we've been told exists where the humans were all hunters and gatherers, right? Okay, humans have been on this planet for, I can't tell you the exact number, but, it's, we do a little bit of guesswork here, but we can safely say that close to 200,000 years human beings have been on the planet. So if you take the past 10,000 years, this is a blip of time. This is a fraction of the time that human beings have been on the planet. And in those last 10,000 years, we saw a devolution, a degradation as human beings started this practice of intellectually eating, whereby we had fire and we started cooking and, processing and all these kind of things and all these kind of ways. But even in the modern record, so from 10,000 years ago, 10,000 BC up until now, we still have more modern cultures that did actually thrive on fruit and leafy greens and just, simple human food. The comment reads, the longest lived people on earth don't eat like this. And I would agree, but that's because the other people that we were comparing these groups to eat very badly. So the longest lived people don't eat this lifestyle that I'm advocating. In current culture, as we've constructed it today, we have the current landmarks for what constitutes a long life. Yeah, we have certain demographics and certain cultures that get up to that mark. But to compare them to culture as we've created it right now and notice, hey, the longest living people aren't fruitarians, right? It's like, well, we're comparing it to the current culture that eat just, whatever. So my point is that doesn't say much, if that makes sense. The next part, it seems the people who wrote books on natural hygiene lived relatively short lives. We also, when we're doing this, we also have to remember, like myself, like most of all the natural hygienists, like most people that are listening to this channel right now, like most everybody on planet Earth, most of the health advocates, the health gurus, the people that really come online and try to do healing work and share healing work, most of these people, including myself, were born into this world, raised into this world, and spent the vast majority of our lives destroying our bodies before we started to come online to a healthy modality of eating. It was the same for these natural hygienists, right? Some of these people were deathly sick and deadly sick and just were suffering from horrible preventable lifestyle illnesses before they became hygienists. There's no telling the damage that this could have done. But we always have to remember that there are situations and circumstances and variables that are affecting people's lives that, that we might not know because we just don't have good data. There was nobody really examining these people's lives and right? Off the top of my head, Herbert Shelton, for example, who was a beacon of incredible knowledge with natural hygiene, whom I learned a lot of. Same thing. He didn't grow up as a healthy person. Something that is overlooked, for example, is, later on in life, as he got a bit older, Herbert Shelton's health started its decline only after his favorite stallion decided that it was in his best interest to put a hole through Herbert Shelton's face with his hoof. Right? So excuse me as I'm a little playful with my language. But yeah, so Herbert Shelton was kicked in the face with the hindquarters of a stallion, and it caused incredible damage. And that's when his health started to decline. So things like that, right? We always have to consider this. There's more to the story. But then when you consider how fruit heals the body. So I always make reference to this, Joanna Brandt's book on the grape diet, the grape cure, and how she's healing people who are literally on death's door. Cancer from head to toe. And they go on as simple as a grape diet. And it's as if the whole body is renewed, regenerated, reformed and a completely different person comes out the other side. Now, to expect that same regime that has brought the dead person back to life would somehow be responsible for killing you, it's a hard sell. But to answer that question, why did the hygienists seem to die relatively early, is because we don't know all the variables that caused that, right? There's also, T.C. Fry, for example, was ridiculously sick before he started. He came online to the natural hygiene movement later in his life, after he had been suffering from lots of lifestyle, related disorders, and who knows what kind of damage was done, whereby the natural hygiene protocol that he was living helped him live longer, but it couldn't repair some of the damage that was done from a lifetime of abuse. I mean, God, I wish that I had come into this world and not been abused with awful, horrible food, had my body injected with viciously neurotoxic compounds, death syringes by mad scientists and doctors who don't know what they're doing. I wish that this stuff didn't happen to me. I wish I didn't destroy my body willingly because I just didn't know any better. Even before I got into this world, in the womb, I was being bathed and nourished with probably really bad food, right? So the truth is, I mean, we just don't know what humans look like when they're reared and raised from the time they're young on an actual diet that doesn't hurt them. We just don't have this data because nobody does it. The Dr. Morse and John Rose thing, the same type of thing applies to them. And the last little part there is, wasn't Steve Jobs a fruitarian? Again, it's variables that are not made forthcoming to the public. For example, Steve Jobs, when he was in his 20s, I believe, and he worked in Silicon Valley, he was working a lot with incredibly toxic heavy metals. He was doing a lot of soldering and, being exposed to things like lead and cadmium. Soldering at that time would have exposed one to huge doses of lead, and he was doing that for quite a while. So, and these heavy metals, these toxic heavy metal fumes, the damage that they can do to the body it's you don't want to be exposed to these things. And so, this is something that must be considered. Toxins in all of their various manifestations destroy the body. And the things like heavy metals, these things, like, they reside inside of you unless you actively detox them with really, really intense fasts or cleansing. And even then, I mean, can I tell you absolutely certainly that a fast will purge all heavy metals from your system? I can't tell you that. I can tell you that's really your best option if you want to try to do that. I mean, nothing else is going to do the job. What are you going to go take an Advil? So we don't know exactly how much these things are damaging us, but we have to consider that, and we just don't have all the variables. We don't know all the facts.
I'm Professor Spira, and I wanted to do a quick commentary on Arnold Ehret and Steve Jobs, Ashton Kutcher, and this big misconception that Arnold Ehret was all about a very strict raw food program or a very strict raw fruitarian program, fruit diet. He says in the book that he doesn't recommend all fruit diet fasting for people that have not been through some kind of transition, have not done detoxification to a certain extent to get their body ready to go to those higher levels of healing and fasting. And there's a lot of people, such as Steve Jobs, that have totally misinterpreted and misunderstood Ehret's message and totally disregarded his sophisticated transition system. That is the healing system, mucusless diet healing system, mucus-free diet healing system. So it's a transitionary system. The key is transitioning with mucus-free foods. And so this is another piece that a lot of the raw foodist community and the fruitarian community miss out on in this whole process is, if you're going to be raw, then be mucusless and raw. Because when Arnold Ehret does promote raw foodism for people that have earned that physiologically, that have got to that level physiologically, cleaned themselves for long enough. When people get to that level, it's not a bunch of mucus-forming foods. It's not a bunch of avocados and a bunch of nuts and seeds and all that kind of stuff. That's out of the equation in terms of if you're going down this road and you're talking about the level of raw foodism that Ehret truly espouses. So people like Steve Jobs represent the worst, in my opinion, of how you go about cleansing yourself, healing yourself, transitioning with these higher level plant-based systems of healing. He does exactly what you're not supposed to do. From what I read, he read the Mucus's diet book, but again, he must have skipped over the section that said transition diet, and he tried to just get into some really extreme fruit fasting. Now, if you are from the islands that maybe your parents or your grandparents were like one-sided fruit eaters, then you might be able to transition much faster than somebody that's coming from a bloodline that hasn't had a plant-based diet in 30 generations.
So in this book, How to Prolong Life, it's an exceptional book. I'll more than likely be making reference to this book again at some point. In answering why don't we have a record, why don't we have any literature that talks about this natural modality of living, here's a little excerpt from the book, and I'll just read a couple for you. Porphyry, who was a Platonic philosopher of the 3rd century, a man of great talent and learning, says, quote, "The ancient Greeks lived entirely upon the fruits of the earth." Lucretius, another philosopher on the same subject, says, quote, "Soft acorns were their first and chiefest food, and those red apples that adorn the wood. The nerves that joined their limbs were firm and strong, their life was healthy, and their age was long. Returning years still saw them in their prime. They wearied e'en the wings of measured time. No colds nor heats, no strong disease wait, and tell sad news of coming hasty fate. Nature not yet grew weak, not yet began to shrink into an inch the largest span." Another little quick one from Plutarch. And amongst the other instances of longevity, we have the ancient Britons, whom Plutarch states only began to grow old at 120 years. Boudica, queen of the ancient Britons, in a speech to her army when about to engage the degenerate Romans, said, quote, "The great advantage we have over them is that they cannot like us bear hunger, thirst, heat, or cold. They must have their fine bread, wine, and warm houses. But to us, every herb and root are food, every juice is our oil, and every stream of water our wine. Their arms, legs, and thighs were always left naked, and for the most part were painted blue. Their food consisted almost entirely of acorns, berries, and water." Okay, so anyway, there's a lot more that we could say about this, but to answer that question, okay, why don't we see this in the literature? It's because literature is heavily controlled. So we have this multi-gazillion dollar food industry. Now, it doesn't behoove them to teach human beings that the diet is far simpler than the world is leading them to believe. Why do we not hear about this? It's the same reason why the world believes that they can actually get sick by catching viruses and bacteria, even though that's not true, right? And if they could hoodwink the entire planet into that type of thinking, then it's no stretch of the imagination that they would divorce you from the true history and the true information of what your human diet is in service of money and power. Okay? Mwah. Thank you so much, guys. Subscribe to the FreeMelon Society if you like this video. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will catch you back here in the secret classroom on the next one.